of the High Court of Kenya, who will be joining us shortly to take this discussion forward. But let's start with the number one daily in the country, that is the Daily Nation, and the headline on the Daily Nation. Gentlemen, you will be helping me to break this down for our viewers and your understanding on what is happening. And it is that scandal, or alleged scandal, by Azimio leader Raila Odinga. Like I said, this story features on 4 papers today. That is the Daily Nation, the Star. It also features on the front page of the Standard as well as Taifa Leo. So on what the Daily Nation says, Raila wants G2G fuel deal scrapped. The kicker on that particular story, war of words, opposition chief Raila Odinga now demands the cancellation and investigation of controversial deal, saying it is designed to protect 3 local oil companies from paying 30% corporate tax. National Assembly Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah dismisses Odinga's claims as hot air and political propaganda. That story has been written by Moses Nyamori. It is on page 4. Just to mention some of Odinga's claims before we get to pick the mind of our panelists, Odinga claims that the deal is not a government-to-government one, but one entered with state-owned petroleum companies in the Middle East. On taxes, the deal was meant to protect Gulf Energy. Again, these are allegations by Raila Odinga that the deal was meant to protect Gulf Energy, Galana Oil Kenya Limited, and Oryx Energies Kenya from paying 30% corporate tax, says Mr. Odinga. And on the dollar wars, Azimio leader alleges the oil deal has failed to address any of the problems that President William Ruto said it would when he launched it in March. So, on the other hand, the National Assembly Majority Leader, Kimani Ichung'wah, says the 3 companies are agents of state corporations in the UAE and Saudi. And like I said, that story also features on the front page of the Standard. Ruto oil deal is a scam. That is a direct quote that the Standard has taken from Raila Odinga. The kicker on this is that the plan opposition leader says the government did not enter into deals with other governments, but instead framed it that way to facilitate 3 companies to avoid paying corporate tax, a charge that he said has been passed on to consumers. He asked government to not only cancel the deal, but to also make it public. The Azimio demands, we have already, of course, mentioned them. When we looked at the Daily Nation, they want that Ruto must cancel the contract and revert to open tender system, which ensured guaranteed supply of oil. They also want a probe, that the EACC to probe the deal and find out how and why the country got into it and who is benefiting. They also are calling for the sacking of officials and that the president should send home whoever came up with the deal and they be surcharged. On tax break, the government must restore taxes to 8% from the 16% that came with the Finance Act. And come clean, the government must make public the so-called MOU between Kenya and Saudi Arabia and the UAE. And lastly, open the deal. Ministry of Energy and Petroleum must make public the deal it signed with the oil companies. Now, because this Taifa Leo has a similar story, or has carried this story on its front page as the headline, let's look at how they have looked at it. Nibonge Laskendo, says Taifa Leo. And the kicker is that kiongozi wa Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Raila Odinga sasa anataka mkataba wa ununuzi wa mafuta baina ya serikali ya Kenya na mataifa mawili ya Kiarabu ufutwe na waliohusika kuchunguzwa na kufutwa kazi serikalini. The story is on page 2 of the Taifa Leo. And lastly, how the Star captures it is that Raila cartels make Ruto fuel expensive. Odinga says there was never a government-to-government arrangement. So, gentlemen, let me start with you, Jim. When you get to hear this serious allegations coming on the G2G deal that the country has been in, this is something that Raila intimated to earlier in the week, actually over the weekend when he was in Kisumu County, I believe, or Siaya as well. And the National Assembly Majority Leader has come out to dispel the allegations by Raila Odinga. I have also seen a commentary by the Senate's Energy Committee Chair, the Nyeri Senator Wahome Wamatinga, on the Star, and he says Raila missed the point on G2G deal. This deal seemed to be shrouded in mystery, and nothing much, the government does not seem to be doing much to explain to Kenyans to understand. Does that then open the window for such allegations, whether substantiated or not?
I mean, Raila is the man who brought for us the Eurobond scandal, when everyone was saying how Kenya had ripped big time on the Eurobond market, he was the first person who blew the whistle and said, look, there's a problem with this deal. He's the one who again came and told us about the NYS scandal. He told us, guys, there might be massive looting going on at the NYS. And he told us about the Afia House scandal and told us, so literally anytime his track record, when it comes to whistleblowing on corruption, from where I see it, has been stellar. He's had a perfect performance on whistleblowing on corruption. And so anyone who brushes him aside and says it is hot hair or he is just bluffing is not a very good student of history. Remember that during the Golden Bag scandal, because Kenyans must see that every government, the Moi government had the Golden Bag scandal. Then Kibaki came in with this anti-corruption crusade, and immediately we had Anglo-leasing scandal. And then no sooner had that happened, Uhuru's government came in, and we had the Eurobond scandal, which is still a scandal to date. And these three scandals are closely linked. Now, if you look at the script that Raila was reading from with regards to this G2G scandal now, it is similar, where you have a few companies that have been handpicked by government. These few companies are either not paying tax, allegedly, as Beludinga is saying. The taxpayers are still paying the money. The taxpayers are still feeling pain at the pump. And so it has all the markings of a Golden Bag type of scandal, Anglo-leasing type of scandal, Eurobond type of scandal. And government has been consistent, even in the past, of stonewalling. When the then Attorney General, during the Golden Bag scandal, was put to task about Golden Bag, he stonewalled. And he refused. And they dismissed anyone, including, key whistleblowers, including Anglo-leasing. When Gidongo came out to speak about it, he was stonewalled. He was brushed aside. In fact, he had to go into exile because nobody wanted to believe him. Government never comes out and admits and says, guys, we actually stole money, or guys, we misappropriated money. So we expect from Kimani Ichung'wah, the chair for the Energy Committee, to do just what they're doing, because that's typical of it. But key institutions like the EACC, unfortunately, the people who are supposed to now take this up, institutions that are now supposed to come out and tell Kenyans, well, what Raila is saying, we've gone through the documents and you're not seeing anything, they're unable to actually flex their muscle on this matter. So my considered opinion is that there's a lot to this deal. Anyone who listened to Raila's speech yesterday, there's a lot to this deal in terms of how much we are losing. And he asked a very important question. If this deal is so good, how comes we've not felt the benefits of it? And how long do we need to feel the benefits of this deal? 6 months? Well, 6 months passed. 1 year?
1 year is gone.
Passed. So how long do we need to feel the benefit of this deal?
But Jim, to be fair on the agencies that are supposed to investigate this, because you've said key institutions like the EACC have not spoken about it. Yeah. It has just been raised like a week ago. And the claims, now yesterday is when Raila Odinga now comes out and says, this is a deal entered between the Kenyan government and private companies, not a government-to-government deal as has been hyped. So aren't you being then unfair to the key agencies, because it has just come to the public limelight? Perhaps this is now the time that we should be calling for them to take up the matter.
But Ibrahim, if you and I are learning about it yesterday, isn't it shameful for EACC to be learning about it yesterday? Isn't it a government institution that is being paid by taxpayers' money, that is anchored in the Constitution, whose key mandate is to investigate, and they are sort of supposed to be the ones who do preventive measures, that before this deal was inked, EACC should have been there to ensure that we put all the guardrails, to ensure that we are not losing any public money, to ensure that we have sealed all loopholes for pilferage. So if they're learning about this yesterday like you and I, then there's a problem with that institution.
Then there's a problem. Abija, your quick thoughts about what is happening.
What I can just say is that government-to-government deal, maybe we are going to let the president decide on it for the time being, because at the moment it's just an issue that came up recently. So as Kenyans, we should not speculate on anything because the president hasn't spoken about it. So to my view, let us wait for the president to talk about it. After the president will talk about it, then afterwards we are going to decide and maybe understand if the former Prime Minister's issue is accurate or inaccurate.
But the president has spoken about this particular deal. When he was telling the country or introducing the country to this new direction that the country has taken, he spoke to the benefits that the G2G deal would be having. And perhaps my problem would be, because you are a youth leader in PA. PA is within Kenya Kwanza. Isn't the failure by the government to explain to Kenyans what exactly this deal entails, then what opens the window for such claims to come? And as I said earlier, substantiated or unsubstantiated. Hasn't the government failed in not communicating and explaining to Kenyans, breaking it down so that we all know what exactly the deal is about?
I don't think the government has failed, really, because when the president talked about us getting advantages into the oil deal, I think maybe what he forgot to say was the issues that are being raised right now. So to me, that is why I'm telling you, because I mean also the government, which is Kenya Kwanza government, I believe the president right now, is supposed to explain to Kenyans really what is happening. And if the allegations that the former Prime Minister is raising, if they are really valid. So the president is coming into it, so we are optimistic that things are going to be up.
Michael Gadhanwa, you are a member of Kenya Kwanza. You actually were sponsored to the Nakuru County Assembly by UDA. So when you see such serious allegations come in within, I should call it the very first project of Kenya Kwanza, like Jim has indicated, each and every government has had something that has ended up being a scandal, from Goldenberg to Anglo Leasing, Eurobond, and now this. As someone who sits in government, are within Kenya Kwanza, how are you taking all this?
Ibrahim, we could be giving a lot of attention to probably some hot air, because it's an allegation, and whoever alleges has to prove, number one. Then secondly, from the Raila statement yesterday, he mentioned a lot of things. He said the dollar issue and all this, and things that we wanted to cover by going G to G, we've not seen them. When you talk about money being lost, the 30% taxation that they're saying is not being paid, the corporate tax, they're mentioning 3 companies. We need to prove that these companies are not paying taxes. And again, we cannot be speaking about subsidizing fuel in one end of our mouth. In another end of our mouth, they are saying we want to see the corporate tax from the companies that are supposed to bring oil in. But at the end of the day, we've seen our president insisting. We've seen the president insisting.
I'll allow you to proceed.
Yep.
But perhaps, yep, so that we don't get to mislead.
Yep.
You're saying that Raila Odinga is calling for tax, for these companies to pay taxes, yet at the same time he's calling for subsidies.
Yep.
Yet I believe,
it is the president.
I'm not speaking to him, for him, it is because this G2G has not achieved what the country was told. I mean, each and every day, fuel prices keep going high. Right now, we are on a fuel stabilization fund. Apparently, the cost of a litre of petrol right now would have been 29 shillings?
Yeah. Yep.
So the achievement that the government had touted we would have are not being seen. So isn't Raila Odinga justified?
Number one, when you talk about corporate taxes, like he mentioned, as I want to finish that point before I come to yours, that the president has been so insistent that this time round everyone has to pay taxes. So number one, it is not Raila Odinga who's calling out for the companies to pay taxes. It has been the president's clarion call that everyone has to pay taxes. In terms of achieving what we wanted to achieve, we have a number of things that are contributing to the fuel prices that we are going through. This is one of the ways we had thought is going to bring down the fuel prices in Kenya. We cannot write it off by this time because, as Jim here is saying, a year is gone, 6 months are gone, but we have seen our fuel this time come down by 2 shillings, as much as we are on a fuel stabilization fund. Still, we are in. We have been able to avoid the subsidy side because the president said you are not going to subsidize consumption, rather production, because the funds that are now stabilizing are coming from the fuel levies, as opposed to coming from taxes, where we could collect taxes directly to go and pay these suppliers in order to reduce the prices at the pump. At the same state, Raila Odinga says that these are state corporations. You might come here in Kenya, you want to get into a deal. Kenya Power is the one who have the monopoly of supplying energy. So you are going to get into it with Kenya Power. So when you start saying that we are in deals with state corporation, state-owned corporation, then at the end of the day, we are mincing our words. So what I would want us to look at, other than what we are being diverted to, because this one, but one thing I'm happy is that the opposition has started doing their work. Previously, they wanted to be in government. The last 2 years, we've not been seeing them checking on the government. We are happy they started checking on the government. But before they divert us from where we were, we also need to know the deal we came out with when President Ruto last weekend was in Saudi Arabia and whatever he was able to deal with it.
Well, at this point, let me introduce Nurdin Hagai. Nurdin, karibu sana. You are a bit late, but we had just started looking at what is on the front pages of all our local dailies. And this deal to G2G, rather, alleged scandal by Raila Odinga appears on 4 local dailies today. And I'm sure you listened to Raila Odinga yesterday. And even when he hinted to the bombshell earlier in the week, having listened to Raila Odinga, and the response given by the National Assembly Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah. What is your take on this alleged scam?
Well, first and foremost, you're in Raila doing whatever he's doing, as a citizen of this country, Article 35 talks about access to information. So everyone needs to know what deal, if there's an agreement, it needs to be in public domain. And that is where members of parliament come in. Very unfortunate that the majority leader spoke the way he spoke, but I'm not surprised at the end of the day, because they forget, and clearly taking a cue from him, they forget that oversight is a role on both members of parliament, be it Kenya Kwanza and Azimio. But the wrong misconception is that oversight is only Azimio's role.
Opposition's
role.
And
that is what he needs to check as well, because he needs to understand that they also have a role as elected officials, because they represent certain interests, which are the people. At the end of the day, I believe the G2G deal is kind of hush-hush. Nobody knows what it really is about, you know. And we have a right to information, right to access, to actually understand what it is. So if Raila is speaking propaganda, if he's just making rumors, release the documentation, and that will settle everything. But taking it to a political angle, oh, CG Azimio want to be in government, ABC, that doesn't help anything. Access to information, release the deal that you got into. If it makes sense, we say, yeah, it makes sense. If there are loopholes, we're like, how do we tighten the loopholes? So we move on. Because at the end of the day, whatever he raised, for example, the tax issues, that is wild. If at all it is true, that is an entire different aspect of it all. So I believe, let us put everything in the open so we can get to understand. But in taking a cue from Jim, there's something I want to say. Clearly, in every administration, there is going to be grand corruption. Now, the difference is the magnitude, and we're yet to see. So, 5 years in, we have an issue with the fertilizers that it was called subsidized. We remember Russia donated. We remember that it came here, they said, oh, they used some mechanisms and they sold it to farmers. Now we have this. So we have 5 years to understand the value of their corruption that will be there. We are seeing that they are trying to do something. Yesterday I saw some directives being given. One of the funniest one was, you know, there's a court order that says the DG carer should not be in office, and you're telling the same person to suspend someone. So there's a lot of confusion, a lot of topsy-turvy kind of way of doing things, and I believe the only way we can move forward is when, one, there's access to information, because he rightfully talked about a trip to Saudi Arabia. What we've seen the countries that benefited from that summit, and Kenya isn't among them. So what was our trip about? You get, what do we get from all these travels? You know, because if Parliament was really working, you'd ask a simple question. We've seen that the president move around. Now, what does the country get in return?
From these trips.
From these trips, you know. And that is what we, as a Kenyan, I'm sad because members of Parliament have gone to bed with the executive. You look at, for example, yesterday in Parliament.
Because you have to take a break.
Yes. For example, yesterday in Parliament, they endorsed sending officers to Haiti. Well, the matter was still live in court. Ukuru court was in court. There was an order as to not to do the same. So you ask yourself, whose interest is Parliament serving? But Parliament had a rider on that as they were passing. The National Assembly had a rider that, and it has been a fight between the two arms of government, between the judiciary and the the legislature, that one arm should not interfere with the activities that first get to the other arm. So perhaps because this got to Parliament first, it was an interference because you see there was a legal question in that, does the president have powers to just send officers without the mandate of the people? Now, our mandate is in Parliament because we've delegated the mandate. So when they had that, then the executive made sure that thing was discussed in Parliament. Now, the question was, what was it so hard for Parliament to wait for the case to be heard in court? What was so hard about that? What was the rush? Because we ask a question, whose interest is Kenya serving in taking officers to Haiti? Michael wants to respond, but allow us to take a break because I see that's a burning point. When we come back, I start with you, then we look at the other stories. So you're watching AM Live. My name is Ibrahim Karanja. That is how it gets to start when you host
youthful individuals who are giving you a wide perspective of what is happening in the country. This is also part of the headache of the nation, as we had indicated on our poster. All of these things that we are speaking about, Nurdin has suggested that the government might have disobeyed a court order on one of the DGs that are who has been directed to suspend someone. And the matters court order, there is also a very interesting statement that yesterday came from one of the CAS nominees, who indeed confirmed that she is in office despite a court order. So we will be speaking about this when we come back from the break.
Tune in to NTV every weekend at 9 a.m. for Kids Adventures, the ultimate cartoon extravaganza. Don't miss the laughter, fun and magic.
Selfish, 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 selfish.
Selfish, 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 hey.
And it's not just about entertainment, it's also about teaching valuable life lessons.
Let's practice sneezing into your elbow. Achoo! Yay! You did it!
I'm going to show you how to decorate a bottle using glitters. Let's go.
NTV Kids in association with GoTV.
For non-stop festive fun, stay connected or reconnect to GoTV to keep busy brains entertained and learning this festive season.
Ooh, yes!
GoTV. Love it.
Want to know the biggest story of the week? Do not worry. The Weekly Review got you covered. For in-depth analysis of politics, business, governance, as well as social issues, the Weekly Review covers it all. For well-researched, exclusive and investigative content, read the Weekly Review every Sunday in the Sunday Nation.
Even Job, he overcome the lines the devil had put for him. He entered the next level. Today, I prophesy, just like Job, God bless his life. He received double. Today, you are crossing that suffering, crossing that sickness, crossing that failure, that poverty, joblessness. You are entering your next level. Double.
Kama mtoto amezaliwa nje ya Kenya ni 1 million. Sisi wenye tumezaliwa huku inamaanisha hiyo Ukenya yako ni worth 1 million. Tuko tunasema hivyo kijokes, alafu kesho msikie watu wamejaa kwa border ya Busia. Si uniprocess yangu nitoke.
Everywhere else, when you get stolen from, the first thing you do is you report, right? But in Nairobi, the first thing you do when you get stolen from is you accept.
Wasi wengi wanapiga job za inaitwa vibarua. Kibarua ni ile tuko hivi wengi kwa gate, alafu wanataka wase watatu. So kuna msee ufungwa hivi anasema watatu, alafu anafunga.
Join us for the January 2024 intake in Counseling Psychology, Education, Journalism and Communication, Peace and Security, Sustainable Human Development, Leadership and Management, African Studies, Philosophy and Theology.
Hodi. Habari yako mama. Wewe weka pesa zako wapi?
Mimi huweka pesa zangu kwa hii mkebe.
Mama, sidhani hiyo mkebe iko safe. Kenya Deposit Insurance Corporation lina jukumu la kulinda pesa zako kwenye benki.
All right, you're watching live here on NTV, and even as we went on break, the debate and conversation continued here in studio with my panelists, Abija Swale, the youth leader, Pamoja Africa Alliance, that is PA, We also have Jim India, political analyst. We also have Michael Gadhano, a member of the County Assembly of Nakuru, representing Eburu Mbaruk Ward, as well as Nurdin Khagai, who is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. And gentlemen, actually, Michael, you wanted to jump into what Nurdin was saying in terms of this G2G deal, because we have to wind up and head to the other topic. There are so many topics we need to talk about, and that's why we titled our poster as Headaches of the Nation. So what was your response?
Actually, mine was on the issue of oversight from Parliament. We saw the chairman of Energy Committee speaking to the matter. The Energy Committee is comprised both of Azimio leaders and Kenya Kwanza leaders, and when he spoke on behalf of the committee. So you cannot say that Parliament is not playing its role, or we have division between Azimio and
But we cannot say he's speaking. We cannot say he's speaking on behalf of the committee, Michael. Honestly, yet he wasn't sort of tabling a report on the committee. He's just giving a commentary on the Star. But this is not in Hansard, so we cannot say it's official that he's speaking for the committee.
But at the end of the day, the committee has this information. Look at it from this perspective. Nurdin is saying that the government, the Parliament in this case, is asleep in terms of oversight, both from the National Assembly and the county government level. But the allegations, when they came out, the first response we got from the majority leader, the other one we are getting a response from the chair of the relevant department. So at the end of the day, we cannot say the Parliament is quiet on this issue. If there are further investigations to be done, let them be tabled in Parliament. It's going to be committed to the committee, and we are going to get a proper report.
Abija, despite this deal, we have had it in place for a while. Fuel prices are not coming down. In fact, our neighboring countries, Tanzania, is having its fuel prices go down. Yet in Kenya, had it not been for the Fuel Stabilization Fund, all our prices would have gone higher. Aside, yes, diesel and petrol and kerosene, we've seen a 2 shillings drop. So aren't Kenyans warranted? Aren't Kenyans justified in asking the tough questions, especially in regards to this deal?
Mr. Ibrahim, Kenyans are, they can ask any question they want to the government because, you know, we are in a democratic country. So as to say, okay, the cost of fuel is going higher by high, is going high. But at the end of the day, as I was just saying before, you know, we had a lot of challenges. We have a lot of challenges as a country. Just as you can see, the president came in when we had some debt issues and all that. So the government is really trying to stabilize the country into making sure that the cost of living comes down. And as you know, the president just came recently. You know, he's trying to juggle in between stabilizing the country and putting the nation into a stable position. So as we say, okay, as it is right now, we are trying as much as possible to make sure that the fuel prices are going down. But we are going to give the president some time to focus on the issue.
How much time? It's been over 450 days since he was sworn in.
Yes. You see, as maybe I can just say, is that time, as a Kenya Kwanza government, we are supposed to have 5 years in government. So the 400 days that you're saying, I believe it's okay. But as you can speak and as you can see the record itself, from day one, the president has done a lot of things. So maybe for you guys and maybe the other guys, maybe you're not seeing the good side of us. You're trying to see the negative side of us. So I'll maybe request you...
Or maybe we are seeing what is there to be seen.
No. I'll just request you to see the positive side of us as we continue, as the president continues deliberating into the government issues and making sure the cost of fuel goes down, the cost of living goes down. So let's look at it at a positive angle rather than the negative angle.
Ibrahim, the younger generation would say this government is delulu. It's just delulu, for lack of a better word. It is ridiculous that, you know, they say you want to subsidize production and not consumption, but forget that, you know, fuel is an input in production. So if you're subsidizing production, actually, you need to first start by subsidizing fuel because that's an input of production. And they must also admit that increasing taxes on fuel from 8% to 16% was a bad idea. there's no place you can justify that was a good idea. You cannot justify, for instance, a lot of the decisions that you guys have been making on the floor of the House, passing the Finance Act. It was a bad idea. It has not worked. And I think there's a sense in which people thought that Ruto has this magic wand, that he will just whip it and everything will get back to normal. And now reality is sinking on them that they were probably clueless on how to run this economy. For someone who ran on an economic platform and said that it is the economy first, then other things later, surely they have done very little, in my opinion, to caution Kenyans on, because the cost of fuel has gone up. The cost of unga, the other day the president said that now unga is cheap. I do not know what he meant by cheap, but the last time I went to the shop, it is still more than 150 shillings, 145, 150 shillings. So at what point do we admit that we got it wrong with the finance bill? Because that for me is where things started going wrong. And course correct. Because there's an opportunity to course correct. And we need to take that opportunity when it gets
We need to take that opportunity. And because we need to move from this topic, Nurdin, perhaps you'll have something to throw in. Yes. I'll come to you, Mike, but you'll have something to throw in on this topic. But let's also look at some of the other stories so that we are done with this segment of Newspaper Review. And there is that ongoing mystery about the 17 billion worth of fuel at the ports. And right now, the Nation's team yesterday went to the rural home of businesswoman Anne Njeri Njoroge, and we ran a story by Ngina Kirori earlier on that shows that even the mother is shocked about Njeri. She says, "I did not know my daughter is filthy rich." Pauline Wanjiru Njoroge, the mother of businesswoman Anne Njeri, who has been in the headlines over the contested ownership of a 17 billion of oil shipment, says she is surprised to learn that her firstborn daughter is rich. The last time she saw her daughter was close to 6 years ago. Ms. Wanjiru, who is 71 years old, says she has only been communicating with her daughter on phone, and the last time they talked was nearly 4 months ago. Yesterday, Raila Odinga made a very interesting comment on whether he believed Anne Njeri owned this consignment. In fact, he says there could be people behind the ownership of this particular consignment. But it's something that has been in the headlines across the week. We'll start with you, Nurdin, then get the view of the rest of you. What does this show you? The government says, look, you're not licensed to bring fuel to the country, but you're speaking about fuel that is already docked within the country's territory. So how did you get here?
Forget even about being docked. There's a court order that ship should not leave Kenya. It went. So again, court orders. You see, and we used to be told Uhuru never respected court orders. So we are back to that. Now, the other thing, clearly, the 17 billion consignment, and unless we live under a rock, she is a proxy. So we need to understand who is the front man. So who is the owner of that oil? And then how do you import oil without licenses? So you send the oil to come, then you start getting licenses. So it doesn't make sense.
But Anne Njeri claims she is licensed. It's a matter before court.
Exactly. So I believe the best place to get all the answers we have are in court, because she will put up a good defense, and from the other side also have to put up the documentation in order. I heard the KPA MD saying that he had concerns. So I believe there's a lot to be unraveled, but at the end of the day, you know, there's something said about the sun. The sun will always rise, no matter how you try to hide it. So the truth of the matter is that whatever is being hidden, or if it's a deal gone sour, we'll get to know by the fullness of time. That's Mike. What I believe.
Allow me first to ride on something that Abija touched on. Tanzania has brought down its fuel prices, but I think they are retailing somewhere in Dar es Salaam at they are 32.74 Tanzanian shillings. Convert that into Kenyan shillings, that's about 200 shillings. That's for petrol. So even after bringing their fuel cost down by about 5.8%, we are still riding around the same prices. But at the same time, we're having the dollar issue in Kenya, and you remember that the handshake government, Dr. Thuge told us from Central Bank that our $2 billion forex exchange reserve went missing. So as we are trying to stabilize the dollar,
he actually said something to the effect that we overvalued our Kenyan shilling. But again, because you have brought that particular point by Dr. Thuge, this is a complete turnaround from what he said during his own vetting.
Yes.
But when he was being vetted, he was waiting to get into office. He's gone into office. He's seen what he has seen. He's come out to correct himself. He's not correcting the government position. He's correcting himself. Now, this is a mess that we are trying to get out of. So as much as we are working on other aspects that are going to bring down the cost of fuel, we cannot forget that we are also dealing with the dollar issue. That is an inherited issue from the previous government. So as much as Tanzania, we keep on citing Tanzania as having brought their fuel prices down, but we are heading around the same, even having brought their fuel down. But also to a quick one on the Anjeri issue. This is not a government problem, because you see Anjeri is actually in court trying to fight government, because government is the one that is telling Anjeri, we need to know, you are telling us that this is your own fuel, talking about 17 billion, but of course, it is obvious this is not her fuel. So this one is, you cannot now turn around and start accusing the same government that Anjeri has taken to court because is asking the said proxy to come clear about where the fuel has come from. You hear, she's saying that she didn't even know it required licenses. Herself, she said, to quote her, niliambiwa nafaa kukuwa na license. So at the end of the day, on this one, I think what Nurdin is saying is that government was spot on by saying Anjeri has to prove whether the consignment is hers or she's working as a proxy.
And she'll be appearing before the respective departmental committee on Wednesday next week. We saw that letter inviting her to appear before the committee next week. And Jim, have we had your comment on Anjeri?
I think, I mean, the CS Churchill told us who owns the oil. He actually mentioned the company that owns the oil. He said that oil belongs to Galana. And then Raila, of course, went ahead and told us the three companies that are reaping big on this oil business. And Anjeri's lawyer, Cliff Ombeta, said that the government is trying to steal from Anjeri. And if the government is trying to steal from Anjeri, then I would say Anjeri is just a hustler. It's just someone trying to hustle, trying to make a living in this country. And now serikali imekuwa tena si ya mahasla, inaonekana serikali ni ya madynasty, because clearly it is a high stakes game. But you know we are in an economic crisis when the elites start to fight each other. Because this is a fight among the elites, if you're being honest. There are people who are disgruntled among themselves, and they have brought their dirty linen to the public. The elite rarely fight in public. They fight in boardrooms and at the back. But when you see their dirty linen coming out in public, then you know we are in deep economic crisis. And that is not a good thing for our democracy. Because when elites start to fight, then more often than not, they gang up and they start forming gangs of their own. And previously I'd mentioned that we are in a situation where we have state capture, where institutions have been captured by big corporations, institutions have been captured by these cabals. And these are institutions like, ministries or parliament or whichever ministries. And so when that happens, and then you have infighting among these elites, more often than not, they then cascades down a conflict, because that's when you now start hearing things like there will be demonstrations, right? And when demonstrations start in this country, more often than not, instead of us demonstrating about the cost of living, we start demonstrating about other things. We saw Mlolongo guys deciding this demonstration is about a different matter altogether. So while we might look at this situation as just Anjeri's oil or Galana's oil, for me, it is a serious threat to our democracy when we are allowing the elite to fight in public, gang up, and start pitting the public against themselves.
Against a quick one, Ibrahim, on that one. It could be the elites that are fighting in public, or it could be the government is doing its work when they say they are going to fight fuel cartels. It could be the cartels that are now fighting in public.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, exactly. It could be.
We need to go back. We need to go to Abidjan. Within 10 seconds.
These cartels are always faceless. At the end of the day, you know, we were promised a state capture inquiry, not happening. So at the end of the day, as Jim says, the hustler has been captured. The new state capture.
Abidjan.
For me, I can say, as you can see, Anne's background, as you can see his mother, you can't really relate between the 17 billion and the state of her mother. As you can see, it's a different story, it's a different lineup. So what I can just say is that the government cannot be brought into the issue of Anne. As you can see, the government is trying to fight cartels. So Anne is really not behind the oil deal. The oil deal is someone that has the oil deal, the 17 billion oil deal, is not really Anne, because we have someone. Anne is just yani yeye ni kama kisu ambacho kimewekwa mbele kupigana na watu. Kwa hivyo yeye yuko tu pale. But there is someone that is controlling Anne. Anne is not really interested in
Fair enough. And perhaps D, you will direct me. I propose that we just quickly look at the papers and then get to our topic. Yeah. This is what is on the Business Daily, a story you may need to go through. I may not get the comments, but this will certainly come on the other side of the discussion, that the IMF rescues Kenya from 300 billion shillings Eurobond scare. And this came yesterday as the International Monetary Fund has moved to rescue Kenya from plunging into a financial crisis after the global lender confirmed that it has mobilized funds to help the country to repay the 2 billion Eurobond maturing in June next year. Besides approving an additional $938 million, which is equivalent to 142.6 billion shillings in its sixth review under the extended fund facility and extended credit facility. And I'll quickly want to get your a quote direct from President William Ruto's economic advisor or chair of the Economic Council, that is David Ndii. He says that we will be discussing exceptional access, likely at the 7th review, which entails accessing resources above the quota. The exceptional access is real insurance against future shocks. That is what David Ndii said about the move by the IMF to come in and rescue Kenya. We shall discuss this on the in our main discussion, gentlemen. A different story from the Business Daily. Payroll taxes register biggest shortfall since COVID-19. And this is not new. Over the past couple of days, we have been seeing the KRA speak about a reduction of targeted projections in taxes. And this is another one, a shortfall in payroll taxes that has been seen. This is the biggest since the era of COVID-19. Let's look at the other stories on Taifa Leo. Mwangaza sasa aunga county ya Meru ivunjwe. That is in regards to the Meru County push and pull. Now Governor Kawira Mwangaza says she is ready for the dissolution of the county. And wabunge wakaidi mahakama waidhinisha ripoti ya kupeleka polisi 1000 Haiti. That was mentioned in this discussion. So yes, those are the stories that we have on the front page of Taifa Leo. Sikujua binti yangu ni tajiri kupindukia. Again, the Anne Njeri story, and there is also a picture here by Wachira Mwangi. Ni balaa tupu. This is about the rains that are pounding the country so far, and says ni balaa tupu kwa wakazi wa Bombolulu Mombasa ambao wanalazimika kutembea kwenye mafuriko baada ya barabara ya Bombolulu kwa Bulo kufurika jana kufuatia mvua kubwa inayoendelea kunyesha kila mahali. So the Standard finally, aside from the story on G2G, on the top deck of the Standard, the government to spend 187 billion shillings more. MPs yesterday called out state officials for their role in budget making after the supplementary budget was increased. The story is on page 5. Economic stability, Kenya inks 100 billion loan. That is again on the Standard. And the other story is the Meru story again, no fees for Mwangaza yet. There is a story also, ex-Roads boss to forfeit 500 million shillings. This is about a former senior manager at the